Good morning and welcome to our UU Holton Weekly Service online edition, coming to you from the Unitarian Parlor right here in Holton, Maine. Today we're continuing part 4 of our series on belonging, the problem of polarization. It seems like the problem is getting worse and worse. We'd like to see if we can lessen the effect and look for ways to make things feel a little, just a bit better. We're so glad you are joining us, no matter where you might be, online or right here, and we thank you for spending part of your day right here. Our prelude this morning is from Matthew Hassall, an English Manchester-based jazz musician and composer, and this came off his latest album. Came out in fall of 2022. It's a beautiful groove of spiritual jazz. And the title track, which we're going to listen to, is The Temple Within. And that's taken from a quote by jazz musician and spiritual teacher Alice Coltrane, who was the wife of John Coltrane, saxophonist. And it expands on this idea that your spiritual space is within yourself, not dependent upon bricks or mortar of church, monastery, ashram, or Unitarian parlor. we are now here in this space. For a moment of centering silence, we pause, taking a break from our all too busy lives. We rest in this present moment. We are awake. We are alert. We are alive. We can hear the sound of a chime. I'm going to light our chalice this morning. Terry, would you do the honor for us this morning? While I turn down the fan speed on our fireplace. You're always competing with sound, silence. So have you done this before, Terry? Okay, I'll watch you out of the corner of my eye.
I light it with that one.
Yes, it's transferring the flame. I was amazed by your skill to successfully light the chalice and hold a cup of coffee at the same time. In the mystery of life, all about us, there is light. It gives us a place to be, to grow, to rejoice together. It opens the pathways to love. In this place of friendship, there is freedom. Let the light we kindle go before us, strong in hope, wide in goodwill and inclusion. Let us invite the day to come. Last week, Bill, I was inspired by your storytelling from mythologies and one of the creation stories. So I looked for a poem to follow up on that for opening words today. And this comes from Billy Collins, his collection, 9 Horses. And do you remember back in the 40s and 50s, the mechanical model of the solar system? That would have like the planets and the sun all engaged on metal arms. And they were connected by little pulleys and levers. And when you turn the knob, everything would go into motion on this mechanical model. And I remember as a child being fascinated by the sound of it would make, and everything slowly moving in relation to each other. So I think this is what Billy Collins is doing in this poem. He makes his own model of the solar system, and it's titled, As If to Demonstrate an Eclipse. I pick an orange from a wicker basket and I place it on the table to represent the sun. Then, down at the other end, a blue and white marble becomes the earth. And nearby, I lay the little moon of an aspirin. I get a glass from a cabinet, I open a bottle of wine, and then I sit back in a ladder-back chair, a benevolent God presiding over a miniature creation myth. And I begin to sing a homemade canticle of thanks for this perfect little arrangement, for not making the earth too hot or cold, not making it spin too fast or slow, so that the grove of orange trees and the owl become visible to the eye, not to mention for rolling waves, for play of clouds, geese in flight in the fall, and the Z of lightning on a dark lake glistening. Then I fill my glass again, and I give thanks for the trout, the oak tree, and yellow feather, singing the room full of shadows as the sun and earth and moon circle one another in their impeccable orbits, and I get more and more cockeyed with gratitude. We're going to sing this morning. I've changed the number on you in the bulletin, so disregard. We are going to sing number 188, which is a song about belonging. Come, come, whoever you are. Number 188. And it's going to require a little coordination because it's sung in a round. We've done this before, but it's been 2.5 years, minimum, since COVID. So we're going to divide into 2 sections. This is going to be the Lee and Fred section. They are your leaders, okay? Since they're at the front of the section. And Dan, you're at the front of this section, but I'm going to allocate Dale behind you. She's seen this music before. So you're going to be the leader of group 2, Dale. We're going to sing it through 2 times, just to get the hang of it. And then we're going to sing it as a round 2 times. And I realize this is very much it's like a rehearsal practice experiment. And we'll just see how this goes. So let us stand. I joined you halfway through.
Next time you can do it in 3 parts.
Oh, that's the advanced.
Well, yeah.
I'm lighting his first candle today for Isaiah Glenn Shields, who is a young man from Utah who has walked across America. He arrived in Lupet, Maine yesterday, and this morning he was on live share, walking to the sunrise at East Quoddy Head Lighthouse in Lupet was his aim. So Linda and I he was on at 5:30 this morning. He was making the last trek of his journey. He has been walking for 495 days, over 8,860 miles. So he has zigzagged. It's not that he hasn't taken the most direct route from the West Coast to Lubeck. And he's pushing a cart with all of his gear. Very simple setup, and he's been documenting this online for the last 495 days. And just an amazing story. We call him a Forrest Gump of Utah. The people that he's run into that assist him, they take him out for lunch. Sometimes he'll stay at their house and he's back on the trail. But he never takes a ride. He'll hitchhike, but if he does, he'll go back to the spot that he left and then keep walking. And he's been in no hurry, apparently, to come all the way across. And it's just an amazing story of belongingness on the road with strangers and online. You can track and photographs. It's an amazing life adventure for him. So Linda and I are thinking about going down to actually meet him in Lubeck. It didn't work out, but we did see him online this morning. So that candle is for the adventuresome wanderer in all of us and the unexpected connections that we make. And this is a candle for Irene Brown, who passed away yesterday. She'd be my sister-in-law's mother, Beverly Rowe, and her daughter, Irene Brown, who was 92. So a lot of the family has been coming up this weekend. One of their neighbors, Christoph and Donna as well. So this candle is for Irene and her passing.
Is for washing machines. Yay! No more hand washing.
This candle is for the changing of the seasons and preparing to move from one to the next. With the warm weather, teetering on the top of a step ladder with Jim's help, we got our Christmas lights up over the arbor the other day, and the lights are there and all the pumpkins are there, so we're there. But with the changing of the seasons, we always have to prepare for what's coming. And we've just come out of an electoral season. And may we all try to prepare to somehow reach across the divide and communicate with one another and listen. Amen.
Thank Deb for bringing in a beautiful Christmas cactus and blooming candle this morning. And we're lighting a silent candle for any unspoken prayers this morning. The concerns we carry in our heart, our prayers for others, and any names you might like to bring into today's circle of compassion.
Wood, Cricket, and Corbin.
Marlene and David.
in this world of contention, struggle, and yet incredible beauty, we offer our prayers for healing, good health, and sound mind. May all find their basic needs supplied for food, shelter, safety, and basic dignity. May each of us be mindful not only of our own needs, but the needs of others as well. This is our heartfelt prayer on this day. May it be so. Amen, and blessed be. Our group reading, again, is continuing the theme from last week, Bill, on circles as an image. And this is from the Taoist tradition, number 606, in the back of our book. And it's titled The Tao. And you'll notice some references to the Tao in today's bulletin we'll be using in today's service. I'll read the bold if you assist with the italicized. Before creation, a presence existed, self-contained, complete, formless, voiceless, mateless, changeless, which yet pervaded itself with unending motherhood.
Though there can be no name for it, I have called it the way of life.
Perhaps I should have called it the fullness of life, since fullness implies widening into space, implies still further widening, implies widening until the circle is whole.
I have the sense, the way of life is fulfilled, heaven is fulfilled, earth is fulfilled, and the fit person also is fulfilled.
These are the four amplitudes of the universe, and a fit person is one of them.
People rounding the way of earth, earth rounding the way of heaven, heaven rounding the way of life, till the circle is full.
Okay. Start things off, a few quotes from one of my favorite little books, Letting Go is All You Have to Hold On To, by Greg Eisenberg. It's great for mediators, moderators, motivators, meditators, and medicators. Just about covers it all. So he's talking about complex problem solving. And when it comes to that, our reptile brain says, kill and ask questions later. Our mammal brain says, see if empathy will work first. And our neocortex says, tape record the conversation and establish a good paper trail. There's two more. Dualism works for me, but only about half of the time. And I like to learn from all people, but especially from those who agree with me. So what we're looking at today in part 4 of belonging is the problem of polarization. While it's important to feel like you belong to a group or movement, it's also important that your relationship or point of view regarding other groups does not devolve into an us versus them dynamic. During recent U.S. election cycles, we have seen all too clearly how polarization can be counterproductive to the democratic process itself. So today we are hoping to gain some insight on how do we find ways to maintain civility and respect even when we disagree with someone else's point of view. I remember when I was in junior high and my uncle bought tickets and took our two families to a Boston Red Sox game. The first time I'd ever been to Fenway Park. And best of all, it was a Yankees-Red Sox game against our arch rivals. It was a Tuesday night game, July 31st, 1973, with Pat Dobson, a right-hander, starting pitcher for the Yankees, and Bill Spaceman Lee pitching for the Sox. Red Sox had a 2-run lead going into the 9th inning, but the Boston bullpen had just about as much trouble in those days as they do now. They blew the lead and ended up losing 5-4, much to my dismay. So last night I went online trying to track down the box score to that game, and I found it. How I did it, Dale, was the day after we went to that game was the famous Thurman Munson, Carlton Fisk fight at home, collision at home plate and fight. We missed it by 1 day, and that's the only way I could remember when it was. Track it down. Gotta love the internet. We had seats right behind home plate, but I don't think they hurt my uncle's wallet too much because they were all the way back under the roof, as far back as you could get. And to my surprise, we were surrounded by Yankees fans. I couldn't believe it. What were Yankee fans doing here? And why did the Fenway Park security staff let them in? And of course, in a 9th inning rally, they really made a lot of noise to any Red Sox fans that may have been sitting close by wearing a hat. That was one of my first life experiences with diversity, partisan loyalties, and polarization. Sports related, though it was. I also remember my first political experience, the 1972 presidential election when Richard Nixon and George McGovern ran for office. I was in 7th grade at the time, and one of the guys in my class, Wesley Palmer, I still remember his name, wore a Vote for McGovern t-shirt to school one day. I had never met a Democrat before. This was disturbing to me on 2 counts. One, he was the smartest guy in our class. And 2, he was a minister's son from one of the largest churches in town. How could someone so smart be a Democrat? And how could someone with a strong religious background end up being a McGovern supporter? I was perplexed. Years later, when I found a vintage George McGovern campaign button, I purchased it, and I've held on to it ever since as a reminder of the importance of our always evolving life experiencing and expanding perspectives. And I found this, Dale, downtown at Jeannie Urbanic's little shop she had. She's a former Episcopalian minister who ran a restaurant downtown. So I wear this, I treasure this McGovern pin. When exploring the current dynamic of social and political polarization, 2 of the terms you keep running into are confirmation bias and information silos. Confirmation bias, according to Wikipedia, is the tendency to search for, interpret, favor, and recall information in a way that confirms or supports one's prior beliefs or values. And what makes it especially sneaky is that you are not even aware that you're doing it. Even if someone points it out to you, the personal blind spot bias makes it unlikely that you will see it. This can be a conservative bias, or it can be a liberal bias. What makes it a bias is that you are unaware of it, and it can create a direct felt polarization from other views. When you're isolated in an information silo, the limited content that you have access to separates you from other sources of data, content, and contact. Social media and news media can frame your perspective on any topic or issue more than you may be aware of. I try to make it a practice to sample a wide swath of media, information, and websites. I regularly visit right-leaning outlets just to see what they are saying and see if I can understand what they're saying. I visit left-leaning outlets just to see what they are saying and see if I can understand what they're trying to say. Interestingly enough, when I visit both the right and the left, I hear them saying something similar. When I read the right, they feel like the other side has a lower IQ and are basically uninformed. If they only had the same information as we did, they would arrive at the same conclusion. How can they not get it? When I read the left, they feel like the other side has a lower IQ and are uninformed. If they only had the same information as we did, they would arrive at the same conclusion. How can they not get it? What I'd like to introduce this morning is not something from Cohen's book. We'll get to that in just a minute. But I want to share a basic teaching from Taoism, which is found in the symbolism of the yin-yang image itself. And if you look on your bulletin, you'll see an artistic rendition of sand, two stones, the dark and the light, and the swirl in the sand. When I walk in with our bowl of sand, I'm always interested in people have made swirly marks with their finger. And when they do, I keep thinking of the transitory nature, the irresistible urge to leave your trace, and it's always a different pattern, and it's quite creative. And then I shake it up and prepare for the service. It's gone. But on the inside, you'll see again the classic yin-yang symbol. In Taoism, the problem is not the yin, or the problem is not the yang, it's the exclusion of one or the other. When you do that, dualism only works about half the time. The practice aim in Taoism is to work with both the negative and the positive, the light or the dark, the conservative or the liberal, to work with the entire equation, working to balance the numbers to find a balance point, a place of harmony and inclusion. You use it all, the whole bowl of sand, whatever is in it. You use it all and work to integrate the movement and the content into one functioning bowl of sand, one system. A system that exhibits essentially balance, inclusion, sense of harmony, vitality, and centered calm. And a key part of the symbolism in the yin-yang design is the opposing dot you find in each domain. A black dot on the white side and a white dot on the black. As the diagram in the bulletin states, these dots indicate that there is no absolute or separate yin or yang. Each contains the germ or an aspect or hint of the other. It is two parts, yin and yang, yet all one integrated thing. A bowl of sand, a system of culture. When it comes to your own personal view, it's in the overall context of the supporting whole. There is room for all views. These views are in constant flux and movement. The important question is, what is your particular view right now in relation to everything else? If you are not aware or observing or in communication with those who hold those other views, then you are at risk of being off balance, or confirmation bias can come into play without you noticing. To be aware is to work with it all select and choose, but be in touch and in contact with it all. As you may have noticed, everyone has an opinion, and that's okay. It may or may not be correct. It doesn't mean you have to agree with it. It doesn't mean you have to correct it. Everyone has a right to their opinion, but they also have a responsibility that their opinion is responsible and a helpful one, contributing to the greater balance or welfare of all. One of the key things to remember in conversational dialogue is to always find and hold your own center. If you look carefully in the diagram, you'll see a very small pinpoint dot in the middle of the yin-yang circle in this particular diagram. Usually it doesn't show up on the symbol. In here they've included just a dot. And this is the still point or center around which everything else revolves and spins. And in Taoism, that is the practice point. Can you find that still point? Can you feel it when you lose it? Can you get it back quickly when you need to do so? In Cohen's book, he was talking about situation crafting and wise, in-the-know interventions. And a combination of these two are essentially experiments with practicing the finding the center, assisting someone else, setting up an environment or a context for an individual to explore and to find that place of balance, harmony, and at least dialogue and interaction with, if there's no siloing or separation. So today, I'm going to skip to chapter 13. If you've been reading the book, but you'll notice there's 2 chapters on polarization and then building bridges to polarized groups. And then I jumped all the way in the back. There's an example of belonging in our politics. And that's where this quote comes from. He said, "A major force driving polarization and the dehumanization and demonization that have accompanied it, it is the desire to belong. If we want to open up psychological room for understanding and bridge building across political lines, we have to acknowledge that people become entrenched about their own views, largely because they find opposing views threatening to their own sense of belonging, and by extension, their sense of identity or self. And what I'd add, I noticed, is also a challenge to their sense of what they see as true or truth itself. It often has a rationale for why someone is so adamant in their view, because it is what's true. So in the book, on page 314, there's a list of 9 tips to help minimize polarization. And I'm going to read these. I'm going to include them. I may include the whole talk in this week's mail out, so you can have a copy of these talking points. And in the chapter itself, it breaks down each one of these points and explains how it's done, and various studies related to it. To summarize, in dialogue with political or polarized conversations, number 1, most important thing, affirm that you view them with dignity and see them as people of integrity. This can be conveyed verbally or non-verbally. 2, communicate your curiosity and interest in learning. A growth mindset encourages openness in yourself and the person you're talking to. 3, present your own views as opinions rather than facts. And there's a term they use called opinion framing. It's a technique used to assist someone in that process. Number 4, use stories to capture the human dimension of a problem. And this goes back really to what you were talking about last week, Bill. Abstract concepts, which is so difficult to communicate, a story can oftentimes connect better than facts. Number 5, ask questions about people's views and their reasons for them in a way that provokes reflection and awareness of perhaps contradictions in their beliefs and values. And this is a term labeled values affirmation. Number 6, evoke empathy for the negative effects of policies and rhetoric that people support by asking if they've ever been made to feel the same way as victims. Perhaps also asking if they could share their personal experience with that type of discrimination. Number 7, talk to individuals away from the influence of their group. One-on-one conversations and discussions in small ad hoc groups can work better than debates or dialogues between pre-existing groups. Number 8, make time for people to reflect on how the conversation has influenced them. And number 9, when possible, engage in face-to-face conversations. It can be done online, but the body language is so key in a conversation. Especially when you're talking about this emotional, you're trying to hear someone's story. Someone opening up with some vulnerability, or just to find out, not making assumptions, but using questions to find out where is a person coming from. And directing them towards, have you thought about this, or situations that or situation crafting, essentially. So these type of these are personal engaged conversations. They're not debates, they're one-on-one, and it's the body language and it's little signs we pick up on from each other. Human contact are just key. It's how you say something just as much as what you're saying. I know that was a lot to digest. I just wanted to get it out there, and I'll follow up with those specifics so you can read it. I came up with Dave's 5 tips on how to close the gap. And I'm not going to comment on any of these, they're pretty obvious. Number 1, ask questions. Number 2, look for common ground. 3, push gently. In Tai Chi class, we were taught 4 pounds of pressure when you're doing 2-hand or 2-person Tai Chi practice. That when you touch someone, you never push more than 5 pounds of pressure. You can yield, you can pull back, you maintain constant contact with the other person physically with never more, it's called pushing hands. And the key is that gentle, aware, empathetic connection or touch with the other person. And you end up doing sometimes a lot more yielding than you do pushing. More yin or more yang. The conversation keeps evolving with that feel. It's very much personal, connected feel. To not lose the connection. In Tai Chi, there is no opposition in Tai Chi. You're at one with the entire class, the other person. It's a constant movement, seeking oneness, harmony, and balance. Where was I? Number 4, don't get upset. If you find yourself getting upset, you really need to back off. And number 5, don't try to do too much. Don't try to expect too much. These things take time, of these long-held views. Or, change can happen quick. You don't know. into, it's all a matter of timing, which comes up so much in Cohen's work, of where a person is at that point, and what they need, and where they're at in their life journey. Okay, conclusion, I'm going to read a paragraph out of Cohen. Confronting hard topics rather than avoiding them can be transformative. If we do so by carefully crafting the situation in these ways to open minds and hearts rather than putting others on the defensive. If we don't make others feel threatened, we may be astonished about the breakthroughs in understanding that can be achieved right during that conversation. Even in our day-to-day lives, we can be catalysts for fostering civility and belonging. While we should all work to change our institutions, including the media and our government for the better, we can also take heart that through our own words and actions in our daily encounters, we can reduce conflict in our immediate lives and perhaps even inspire more open-mindedness and compassion in others, in our neighborhood and in our country. We'll take a few minutes for some questions. Before we do the closing, we do have a piece of music for a postlude and extinguish the chalice. I'll give you a heads up, what's coming up next, our schedule's changing into a holiday season. Mary's here next week for a service, and then it goes right into Thanksgiving and Advent. The Thanksgiving service is the first Sunday of Advent. So we're going to be introducing themes of belonging into Advent this year, but we probably will not return to the Cohen book and to Neil deGrasse Tyson's book until January. But what's coming up is a huge section on the challenge and the psychology of hate groups. And it's some of the best research that I've seen on this topic, and it gets very specific. And I'm not sure how we'll do that in a service, but there's some good work that needs to be, for us to take a look at there, because it is relevant. There's going to be an extreme degree of polarization, and some of the most difficult to crack or find, build bridges to, but it's being done. Amazing work in those areas. So we'll have time. We'll take 4 minutes for any questions you might have or feedback, just to chat about anything regarding the topic of polarization. Christoph?
Well, bring chocolate to drama is my solution.
It's common ground, right?
It is. It is.
Everybody loves chocolate.
Is the research on hate groups from the Cohen book? Because he has sections.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm reading it, that's where I happen to be right now, so.
This is dense material at times, but so it's a challenge to share in a context on Sunday morning. But for research, it's amazing at how specific of how change occurs in transformation, and that's what I don't often see in a lot of literature. And so it's good stuff, but it's a lot of work to get to. Dale?
And listen to the list of Cohen's 9 and your 5. As I'm listening to it from my place, it's like, how do I open myself gently to help them come into my point of view? It's like one-sided, I mean, it's like from my point of view, not that I'm going to be changed to their point of view. And so I think I need to read them more carefully and be open to not just where someone else is coming from, them and us, I mean, other people who have a different point of view. But the why, maybe, not just the fact of where they are, but why, and why am I where I am, and is there any meeting place?
Because that does interest me.
I'm right.
What's important are not the details, and Colin keeps talking, what's important is the connection. And hard work needs to be done, but we're not going to be able to get even to that point, to sit down and work together on the issues or problem until we can connect, have respect for each other, and to de-escalate so much of the tension that's in the room. The polarization has to be diminished to a point where you're actually connecting with someone. And that was a hard thing for me to do with the Yankee fans. It took me years. I'm still getting over being able to sit down and enjoy a game without being so partisan and having to have my team win every time. Donna?
Same thing, going into Miami as an Atlanta Braves fan for NLCS in the 90s. It was not pleasant seeing many people's cars vandalized because they had Braves gear. And it was very violent indeed because people forgot how to be civil with one another and show good sportsmanship and love of the game. And we see this also, I saw it the other day as I was walking through downtown Bolton, because I was wearing a moose mane shirt in an abundance of rainbow colors on a pale blue background. And I had my patriotic socks on. That's how we build common ground. We're all Americans. Whatever our differences may be, we have common grounds as that. And where we come from in Florida, there's a coffee place called Common Grounds. And it's got a slant, but it's where people can civilly meet and greet and discuss with a little discourse, but it still remains civil. And you don't result to violence because you have a difference of opinion. We can coexist, and that's where the yin and yang, I think, really can help people connect with community in that core of coming together. Thank
So
you
this
for
is
bringing
what we're
this up.
trying to work towards within, the differences within our own pluralistic group here and the community at large. And it really is a practice point. And we're trying to arrive at to increase our own understanding of ourselves and our relationship to these challenging issues. And the main thing I wanted to point out in today's message was we really need to be in the mix and not to avoid or have fear. Even though we're hesitant to want to get into a difficult conversation with someone, it's key to have that mixed contact and still be able to maintain one's own integrity, composure, and connection to whoever you're talking about. It should not be able to knock you out of that center. But it's so hard to stay there. And I realize that. And I'm working on it too. But we'll continue these conversations in future services or during coffee hour today.
And bring chocolate.
And
Dark chocolate.
we extinguish the chalice for today, but the light does not go out. We carry it with us, the light of compassion, tolerance, and a new vision for a better world. Peace and loving ways to you all this week. And I do have one more song to share. This comes from the Cowboy Bebop soundtrack to Netflix series. And it's music written by Yoko Kanno, and she performs, this is her own band, a Japanese band, Seatbelts. And it's a delightful piece called Whistle and Afternoon. Whistle if you like. I want to thank Fred and Lee for doing coffee hour today. And I believe Deb brought some things in as well, flowers and food. Thank you, Deb.
So does Christoph.
Okay. Christoph, thank you as well. Enjoy your afternoon. Whistle as you go.
We want to thank everybody for tuning in today. If you'd like to show your support, please hit the like button, subscribe to our channel if you're not already subscribed, and help us out by sharing this message by clicking the share button. If you'd like to make a monetary donation to you, Church Holton, there is a link to our online donations in the video description down below. And again, thank you so much and have a blessed day.